This is your Barbados Today Evening News Update for Tuesday, May 5. Small players in the tourism industry will not be left behind once the sector recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. That's the assurance from Tourism Minister Symmonds, who has pledged to help small businesses, entrepreneurs and tourist attractions rebuild their operations. Speaking during a virtual meeting this morning, the minister said the survival of these businesses post-COVID-19 is critical to Barbados' development.
We have to avoid the erosion of small business. I think you would appreciate that almost every one of our attractions, and certainly the vast majority of them, are attractions which operated before COVID on very thin profit margins. In some instances, razor thin if there were profit margins at all. We have to avoid the erosion and devastation of entrepreneurship. A lot of the players in the tourism sector are not, contrary to popular belief, the very large and well-established, easily identified parts of the sector. But there are small operators, whether those operators be taxi operators, whether those operators be persons who are selling food and beverage, whether those operators are people who are providing arts, craft, etc. They all plug into the tourism sector. And the end result of this, as best as is possible, has to be that we carve out a plan so that we avoid the erosion of small business and the devastation of entrepreneurship effort in Barbados.
Symmonds acknowledged that the global pandemic has severely impacted the tourism sector, but he maintains it will remain the island's main driver. He, however, noted there will be changes going forward.
Part of what we are thinking about now, and where in fact, I'm going to Cabinet within the next few days on, is a paper which will demonstrate clearly the need for us to have, as part of the way forward, a ministerial level committee on building out the linkages between the critical sectors of this economy and using tourism in order to take with us the agricultural sector, for example, using tourism to take with us the manufacturing sector, such as it still is, and what must now be done in terms of, especially at a high-end level of manufacturing and a value-added level of manufacturing, creating a way in which we can plug that into the demands of the tourism sector. Take with us the cultural industries, take with us, as I said before, the sporting aspects of our community. Virtually everything that generates money must be plugged into the lead sector.
Barbados recorded no new COVID-19 cases today. Health authorities say no positive cases were diagnosed from 91 tests conducted on Monday. One patient was scheduled to leave isolation today after recovering from the virus. So far, 47 patients have recovered from the respiratory illness, while 28 remain in isolation. The number of people diagnosed in Barbados remains at 82, and this includes 7 persons who died. Meanwhile, the Director General of the Pan-American Health Organization, Dr. Carissa Etienne, today urged the Caribbean and Latin America to study the trends of the COVID-19 pandemic in their countries as they seek to ease lockdown measures. At her weekly virtual press conference today, she made it clear relaxing measures too soon could accelerate the spread of the virus.
We have learned a lot about COVID-19 from the experiences of countries in our region and many other countries around the world. We must use what we've learned and the data that we have gathered to make smart choices that will impact the next phases of the pandemic. PAHO tracks and analyzes a range of COVID-19 data from countries. We track new cases, new deaths, the number of occupied hospital beds and ICUs, and many other indicators. This data paint a picture of how the virus is impacting the region, what's working, where there are areas of concern, and where we need to focus greater attention.
The Optimist Club of Barbados today joined national efforts to ensure all students will have devices to participate in classes online. President of Optimist International Adrian Elcock told Barbados Today they received their first batch of 50 tablets, which will be distributed to the Childcare Board, the Ministry of Education, and vulnerable families they serve. He says they will be importing more tablets in the coming weeks and encourage other players to support the initiative.
The goal is to get 100 tablets within 2 weeks. We have a corporate sponsor who's come on board, Inotech Construction or Inotech Services Limited. They have pledged to buy 20 of them with us. And we have some other supporters that's joining with us, and we're hoping that by the end of next week we will have that 100 in hand and ready to hand over to the Ministry of Education for their serialization to make sure that there's no duplication and to get them in the hands of the children. It's not ideal that the children now potentially could miss 2 weeks of school, but hopefully there have been ways that they can catch up. Fortunately, with the technology, the lessons don't disappear, I assume, from the hard drive. And I'm sure the teachers who are doing a fabulous job already will step up and make sure that they can pull those children who may be a little delayed along.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Barbados Today, news you can trust.
To regional news, the St. Lucia government is still anxiously awaiting word on whether public servants will buy into its offer to receive their salaries part in cash and part in bonds or treasury bills over the next few months. We get more in this report from HTS News Force.
The Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Alan Chasney, says much is riding on the response to the government's offer. The Cabinet of Ministers, he says, stands ready to accept a 25% cash, 75% bonds combination for the next 3 months. But he says...
But remember, it's tied to everyone accepting. So the ministers have agreed to accept 25% in cash and 75% in bonds for the 3 months. We're certainly hoping, and again I want to reiterate, nobody's forcing the civil servants. We've gone to the civil servants as the Ministry of Finance to articulate the difficulties.
The Prime Minister admits with short-term cash in short supply, the government's finances are in dire straits. He says the offer on the table is far more favorable than it is thought to be.
So all we're asking the union workers to accept is part cash and part in bonds. We have agreed that on the bonds, that their PAYE would be applied to the bond. And also with the banks and the credit unions now agreeing to give them a moratorium, it means that some of them actually may take home a higher net cash pay than when they were getting paid and the deductions were being made.
On the international front in Canada, domestic violence concerns have once again come to the fore in light of a recent string of violent incidents in New Brunswick. Callum Smith of Global News Canada reports.
Domestic violence or intimate partner violence concerns are growing as isolation periods continue as a result of COVID-19. Clinical and forensic psychologist Marianne Campbell says with kids not going to school and people not going to work during the pandemic, there's a greater chance for violence to occur.
And for it to be more prolonged because of all of the stressors that the families are experiencing that can trigger the violence in the home.
But she says it's important to be clear, while COVID-19 likely doesn't cause domestic violence,
it's creating increased pressure for it to occur and greater opportunity for it to occur, but it's not likely causing the behavior. That stems from a lot of other things.
Crossroads for Women provides supports to women and children escaping domestic violence, including a 24/7 crisis line. Emergency Response Coordinator Gina Collette says they've actually seen a decrease in calls in March and April, but that's not good news.
They are in the house stuck with their abuser, so they're having more trouble asking for help and reaching out for help. But we predict definitely a big increase when this is all done of women that will come forward and ask for help.
And while an abuser can be controlling over things such as the victim's phone, social media, or money, Collette says it's important to frequently check in with loved ones.
So it's important to ask yes or no question and to actually ask them, like, are you safe? Do you feel safe? Are you being a victim of violence?
That's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.